There's a reason this video might trigger you. Not because it's cruel, but because it's true. We live in a world where no one wants to talk about the dark side of the feminine. We idolize empowerment, but ignore entitlement. We celebrate independence, but overlook the addiction to control. We speak of self-love, but silently chase validation. This isn't a hit piece, it's a mirror. These are the brutal truths most women will never say out loud, and most men are too afraid to admit. But if we don't talk about them, we can't evolve through them. This is a journey through the shadow side of modern femininity, a breakdown of the unconscious games, projections, contradictions, and wounds that shape how we relate, how we love, and how we destroy what we crave most: connection. If you're brave enough to watch until the end, you might just understand women in a way you never have before, including yourself. Let's begin. Brutal truth. Women want power, not partnership. Let's start with the one that will sting the most. Many women aren't truly seeking partnership. They're seeking power, but they disguise it as love. And that's the uncomfortable truth most don't want to admit. Love sounds noble. It sounds selfless. But what happens when we peel back the mask and look deeper? The desire for love often mutates into the desire for control, not just of a man's attention or time, but of his entire life. What he says, what he sees, what he watches, what he thinks, who he follows on social media, who he texts, what he does on weekends. Whether or not he watches porn, lifts weights, goes out, sleeps in, spends money, or breathes too loudly. That's not love, that's possession. And the problem isn't just cultural, it's psychological. Women, particularly those with unresolved childhood trauma or abandonment wounds, often equate control with security. If I can control him, I can feel safe. If I can dominate his world, I won't be abandoned like I was before. But here's the paradox. The moment control becomes the strategy, connection disappears. Control is the opposite of love. One requires trust, the other assumes fear. The more you try to cage a man into becoming your emotional puppet, the more he retreats, emotionally, then physically. And then you call it, he's afraid of commitment. No, he's afraid of being erased. The pivot is simple but painful. Ask yourself, am I connecting or am I controlling? If he has no room to be himself, he's not yours. He's your hostage. Brutal truth number 2. Women crave to be worshipped, but rarely worship themselves. Here's a tough one. Modern women want to be adored, idolized, pursued, validated, but rarely take time to become the kind of woman worth adoring. We demand attention. We demand affirmation. We want men to bow to us emotionally. But ask most women today who they are without the validation, and you'll hear silence. Because the truth is, a lot of us don't know. We've turned self-worth into a performance, on Instagram, TikTok, or in the way we dress or talk. But real self-worth isn't loud. It doesn't need external worship. It radiates from within. When a woman has no real relationship with herself, she begins to use the world as a mirror. She asks, "Do you love me?" Not because she wants connection, but because she doesn't know how to love herself. And what happens when a man doesn't offer constant emotional worship? Panic, accusation, withdrawal, silent treatment, emotional sabotage. The need for male attention becomes an emotional addiction, and when the high disappears, so does the sense of identity. The problem isn't the lack of worship from men. The problem is that too many women refuse to worship themselves first, to build a life, a passion, a core of femininity that exists even in solitude. Because if you don't have a sense of who you are when no one is watching, you'll become whoever someone else wants you to be just to feel wanted. Brutal truth number 3. Women hate other women more than they realize. This one cuts deep, and it's why female friendships today feel like landmines. A lot of women claim they support other women. They post about sisterhood, empowerment, and girl power. But watch how quickly that dissolves the moment another woman enters the room who's prettier, smarter, or more successful. Suddenly, that empowered queen energy turns into silent resentment. We don't talk enough about the quiet competition that simmers beneath the surface. The envy, the silent judgment, the fake compliments, the desire to be the only one admired in the room. And it's not because women are inherently cruel. It's because society has trained us, through years of comparison, beauty hierarchies, and scarcity mindsets, to see each other as rivals. Instead of building strong communities where we lift each other, we isolate, we gossip, we compare. We hold back compliments and share in each other's failures more than we celebrate each other's wins. Why? Because deep down, many women believe, if she wins, I lose. That's a lie. Real feminine energy doesn't operate in scarcity. It thrives in abundance. One woman's light doesn't dim your own. A goddess doesn't compete. She simply shines. So the next time you feel envy, ask, what part of myself needs healing? Brutal truth number 4. Women confuse fantasy with reality and call it standards. Modern dating is a mess because women have been sold a lie. You can have it all, at once, in one man. He should be 6 feet tall, emotionally vulnerable, stoic, masculine, gentle, rich, attentive, dominant, soft, romantic, dangerous, kind, artistic, athletic, aggressive, tender, and most importantly, obsessed with you. That's not a man. That's a Frankenstein monster. And women don't just dream about this ideal. They date, expecting to find him. The moment a man lacks one of the traits in the fantasy blueprint, he's not ready, or not emotionally mature, or he's giving bare minimum. In reality, he's just human. This emotional contradiction, wanting a beast who's also a puppy, creates a toxic dating loop. A woman meets a man, falls for his masculine presence, then resents him for not being more feminine. Then she meets a more sensitive man and resents him for not being more dominant. No one wins. Because she's not dating a man, she's dating a dream. Here's the harsh truth. Women fall in love with potential more than reality, and that potential rarely exists outside the mind. The pivot? Stop trying to fix men. Start accepting what is. Is he grounded, present, emotionally consistent, and self-led? That's the real gold, not his abs or his paycheck. Brutal truth number 5. Women use sex as a weapon, then blame men for the fallout. It's the move no one talks about openly, but we all know it exists. Withholding sex to get a reaction, using it to reward behavior, offering it to manipulate attention. And here's the twisted irony. The same women who claim sexual liberation are the ones weaponizing it in relationships. Sex becomes currency, a bargaining chip, a punishment, a control tool. But here's the psychological catch. When sex becomes a tool, intimacy dies. Love can't exist in the same room as manipulation. And men, especially good men, feel it. When a woman withholds affection not out of authentic disinterest, but as a strategy to provoke emotional compliance, it creates resentment. And that resentment doesn't disappear. It calcifies into emotional distance. The result? Women end up emotionally starved in the same relationships they tried to control. They say, he's become cold. No, he's become numb. You turned love into leverage. The pivot is simple but radical. Use your sensuality to build connection, not control. Use it to inspire devotion, not demand it. When a woman's sexuality becomes a gift, not a weapon, she becomes unforgettable, not because she's manipulative, but because she's rare. Brutal truth number 6. Women are addicted to emotional drama, then complain about chaos. Many women don't want peace. They say they do, but peace feels boring. What they crave is emotional stimulation. The plot twists, the mystery, the chase, the toxic highs and lows of a man who's hot one day, cold the next. Why? Because unresolved emotional patterns feel like home. If your nervous system grew up around chaos, unpredictable fathers, emotionally unavailable parents, then chaos becomes your comfort zone. So even when you meet a good man, one who shows up, listens, and communicates, you'll subconsciously sabotage it. You'll provoke, withdraw, test, pick fights, just to feel something. Then you call him boring, or say there's no spark. This isn't just behavior, it's trauma chemistry. The body becomes addicted to cortisol spikes, to the thrill of uncertainty. And when it doesn't get that, it feels flat, lifeless. So you go back to the bad boy, the ghoster, the roller coaster, just to feel alive again. The pivot? Learn to regulate your nervous system. Learn to recognize stillness as safety, not suffocation. Peace isn't boring. Peace is unfamiliar when you've lived in war. Brutal truth number 7. Women talk about equality, but expect entitlement. Modern feminism gave women freedom, but it also gave rise to a confusing entitlement that few want to unpack. We say we want equality, but still expect men to pay, pursue, protect, provide, and plan everything. We expect traditional masculinity with modern independence, and throw tantrums when we don't get both. You can't have it both ways. If you want to be seen as an equal, you have to show up equally, not just when it's convenient. That means emotional accountability, financial responsibility, and spiritual maturity. It means offering protection in return, not just demanding it. It means taking the masculine burden off his shoulders sometimes, because real partnership is built on reciprocity, not reward systems. The ugly truth is, some women still want the perks of patriarchy without its price. They want to be pampered, but not pressured. They want dominance, but not direction. They want men to lead until they disagree. Then suddenly, it's toxic masculinity. The pivot? Ask yourself, do I want partnership or privilege disguised as progress? Brutal truth number 8. Women confuse attention with worth. We live in a world where likes are love and views are validation. And in that world, too many women have come to equate attention with value. If I'm seen, I matter. If I'm desired, I'm enough. But this equation is flawed, and it's dangerous. Because attention isn't love, and desire isn't devotion. The man who double taps your bikini photo at 2 a.m. isn't the same man who'll hold your hand at 2 p.m. when you're crying in a doctor's office. The world gives you attention for how you look, but love is built on how you live. And yet, most modern women invest more in the performance of beauty than in the foundation of character, more in skincare than soul care, more in angles than values. It's not wrong to be beautiful. It's not wrong to want to be seen. But when your sense of identity becomes dependent on how others perceive you, you lose sovereignty over your worth. The pivot? Build a life that shines even in private. Be someone whose value is felt in silence, not just admired in selfies. Brutal truth number 9. Women misunderstand men and don't care to learn. This one will make some squirm, but it's true. Many women don't want to understand men. They want to change them, fix them, or manipulate them, but not understand them. Because understanding would mean acceptance, and acceptance would mean letting go of the fantasy. Most women don't want to know what masculinity is. They want men to express emotion, but only in ways that make them comfortable. They want strength, but not silence. They want decisiveness, unless it contradicts their own opinion. They want vulnerability, but only on their terms. We're taught to decode male behavior through memes, podcasts, and TikTok theories. But real understanding requires stillness, humility, and curiosity. It means listening, not to respond, but to receive. It means seeing men not as broken versions of women, but as beings with their logic, struggles, and design. Carl Jung wrote about the anima, the feminine spirit inside every man. But today, we don't want to meet his anima. We want to replace it with ours. The pivot? Stop projecting. Start observing. What makes him shut down? What makes him come alive? Men are not puzzles. They're not projects. They're not emotionally deficient women. They're men. Learn the difference. Brutal truth number 10. Women hold the power, but refuse the responsibility. This is the final and perhaps most important truth. Women are more powerful than they admit. Not in the corporate, loud boss babe way, but in the quiet, psychological, emotional sense. Women shape men, influence culture, set sexual standards, create emotional blueprints for children. They are the gatekeepers of life and love. And yet, most women don't own that power. They either play the victim, blaming men for everything that goes wrong, or they abuse their influence, manipulating with sex, shame, or silence. Here's the contradiction. The same women who cry, "I'm oppressed," are often the ones dictating terms in the bedroom, in the household, and in the emotional dynamic. They want to be goddesses, but don't want to do the inner work it takes to become one. They want to be adored, but without being accountable. Power without responsibility is corruption. And that's what we're witnessing in modern relationships. The pivot? Ask yourself, am I using my power to build or to break? To uplift or to undermine? A woman in her full feminine power doesn't need to control, because her presence already commands. These aren't truths designed to shame. They're truths meant to wake us up. Not every woman fits every point, but every woman has room to grow. The goal isn't guilt, it's awareness. And awareness gives you choice. Do you want to keep repeating patterns that bring you pain? Or are you ready to evolve? We can't heal what we refuse to face. But once we do, once we stop blaming and start becoming, everything changes. Relationships change. Self-respect grows. The anima awakens. And suddenly, the love we were always chasing starts flowing from within. That's the secret. It was never about being chosen. It was always about choosing yourself first. Before we dive into some final reflections, let's recognize something. Every brutal truth we've uncovered shares a common thread. Control over connection, fantasy over reality, performance over substance, power without responsibility. These aren't just social issues, they're emotional habits. They're patterns embedded deep in the unconscious. And Carl Jung would say they're not just individual flaws, they're shadows. Parts of the feminine psyche we've buried, disowned, and left unexamined. We project them onto others, especially men, and then blame the world when the reflection gets ugly. But here's the twist most never see. The shadow isn't evil. It's unintegrated. It's the part of us that holds the pain and the power. A woman who hasn't met her shadow will use her femininity as a tool for validation, manipulation, and passive control. But a woman who has faced her shadow, who is reconciled with her anima, doesn't need to manipulate. She doesn't need attention. She doesn't need to dominate, because she knows who she is, and that's a rare thing. Carl Jung described the anima as the inner feminine force within men. But what about the reverse? What do women project outward when they haven't integrated their anima? They don't just want men to be strong. They want men to mother them, to emotionally coddle them, anticipate their moods, and regulate their feelings. When they're insecure, they want men to fix it. When they're angry, they expect men to validate it. When they act out, they expect empathy, but offer none in return. This is the projection of the unintegrated feminine, the need to be held emotionally without doing the emotional work herself. But a real woman, one who has done the inner work, doesn't need a man to complete her emotional identity. She's already whole. She wants a man to walk beside her, not carry her. That's the difference between emotional maturity and emotional dependency. The myth of having it all is hurting women more than helping. We touched on this earlier, but it needs to be repeated. Modern society sold women a fantasy. You can have it all. The perfect body, the thriving career, the ideal relationship, the spiritual life, the soft girl aesthetic, the boss girl's ambition, all of it, at once, without sacrifice. But life doesn't work that way. Every choice is a trade-off. Every dream requires discipline. Every season requires presence. And when you try to hold everything at once, you end up holding nothing with depth. The reason so many women feel anxious, burnt out, or numb isn't because they're not good enough. It's because they're stretched too thin, emotionally, energetically, spiritually. They're trying to be everything to everyone and losing themselves in the process. Real power comes from prioritizing, choosing one thing deeply, not forever, but for now. Whether it's motherhood, career, self-growth, or healing, pick your season and be fully in it. That's where peace lives. Did you know that the women's community is collapsing, and not just on social media? We've forgotten how to connect. And no, social media followers don't count. True female community, the kind that raises children, supports marriages, heals trauma, and nourishes emotional growth, is nearly extinct. What we have now are highlight reels, group chats, and passive-aggressive comment sections. Women no longer gather in truth. We gather in an image, in comparison, in silence, in judgment. And that's tragic, because women have always been the heart of the community. What's worse is that the competition we carry against other women prevents any real bonding. We smile, but we're secretly measuring each other. We offer advice, but only to feel superior. We offer support, but only as long as we're the ones being admired. That's not sisterhood. That's silent warfare. And until we heal the part of ourselves that needs to be the only one, we'll never experience real connection. Not with men, not with children, and certainly not with each other. Another truth I think you should know: weaponized femininity. When seduction becomes coercion. Let's talk about femininity. Not the gentle, nurturing nature. Not the sexy appeal of a woman in power, but the performance, the weaponized version. Some women have learned to use their femininity, not to attract, but to control. Tears become a bargaining chip. Sex becomes leverage. Beauty becomes bait. Vulnerability becomes strategy. And what's worse, many women don't even realize they're doing it. They were taught this by culture, by mothers, by broken environments. It was survival. But now it's sabotage. Because a man who stays out of fear isn't staying out of love. And a relationship held together by guilt, shame, or manipulation is a slow form of spiritual death for both people. True femininity doesn't manipulate. It magnetizes. It inspires. It creates space, not traps. A woman in her divine feminine doesn't need to beg for devotion. Her presence calls it forth naturally. After all, what is the real reason why so many women feel empty, even when they win? Here's the bitter truth. Many women chase their dreams, get the guy they love, get the ring, the house, the modern lifestyle, and still feel empty. Why? Because they were chasing outcomes, not inner transformation. They were chasing roles, not identity. And once the fantasy ends, they're left facing a woman they don't know. The truth is, a lot of women don't have a relationship with themselves. They know how to get attention, but not how to give themselves affection. They know how to perform in relationships, but not how to be alone without falling apart. They know how to ask for things, but not how to give themselves what they need. This emptiness isn't caused by men. It's caused by disconnection from the inner self. That's why spiritual work, whether through journaling, therapy, shadow work, or creativity, is essential. Because without it, everything else becomes a mask. And eventually, every mask slips. This will be the final reflection. From brutal truth to beautiful integration. So where does that leave us? With a challenge to stop blaming men and start knowing ourselves. To stop controlling and start connecting. To stop performing and start transforming. None of these truths is about shame. They're about seeing the patterns. About pulling back the curtain and asking, am I the woman I pretend to be? Or am I still running from the woman I'm meant to become? That's the beginning of individuation, of real feminine power. The woman who confronts her shadows doesn't need to fight men. She understands them. She doesn't need to manipulate. She magnetizes. She doesn't compete with other women. She complements them, because her worth isn't conditional. And that woman, she's the rarest kind of woman, the one who knows that the most dangerous force in the world is not a man in power, but a woman who has finally remembered hers. If this message challenged you, good. If it made you think, better. If it stirred something deeper, then don't scroll past it. Don't dismiss it. Share it. Talk about it. Reflect on it. Because if we're going to change the culture of relationships, femininity, and power, we have to start by changing ourselves. One woman at a time. One truth at a time. And if you want more conversations like this, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment. What brutal truth hit you the hardest? Because we're not done. We're just getting started.